Hello and welcome back to another episode of Raise the Vibe with Liz. I'm your host, Liz Peterson, and today I have the pleasure of hosting Lisa Campion. We are kindred spirits, and I'm so excited to have her on the show to talk everything psychic. So, for those of you who haven't found Lisa yet, Lisa is a renowned psychic, energy healer, and author with over 30 years' experience. She specializes in helping people accept their intuition and spiritual potential through her best-selling books, The Art of Psychic Reiki and Energy Healing for Empaths. A sought-after teacher, Lisa encourages empaths and spiritual seekers to live with confidence and purpose. Her work has been featured in podcasts, conferences, and media, inspiring others to embrace their gifts and heal through energy work. Lisa is dedicated to guiding individuals towards soul-aligned lives and greater personal development. Lisa, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Liz. I'm so happy to be here.
I'm so happy to have a fellow healer on. I love hosting healers and psychics. And I always like to ask my guests, what is it that led you to doing what you're doing today?
You know, I it wasn't I I want to say it wasn't really a choice for me. I guess that's sort of a weird thing to say, but I just was one of those like totally psychic children. And I don't know, I was born in the 60s, so I grew up in the 60s, 70s, and 80s in New England. And I really spent, of course Murphy's Law, like my house is super duper duper haunted. One of those like big old Victorian houses we have here in New England. And I just was really having to deal with my day-to-day experience, which nobody could really explain. It wasn't like something you really talked about back then. It's not like there were psychics on TV or any information about this. So I spent like the first 20 years of my life trying to figure out what was going on, how to turn it on and off, how to pretend to be normal in public, and all of that. So I actually started working as a psychic when I was 19, was still in college. And I don't know, I just was one of those people that always knew that's what I was going to do. And that's what I've done my whole life. So I think I just came in with a mission, and that mission was to help other psychics, healers, and empaths step into their gifts in a much more graceful way than I did, because really it was like I just made every mistake in the book and didn't have any help, and it was really painful, and all those things. So I feel really good when I can help somebody else do it better than I do, and than I did, that I went through it. And I feel like my mission in life is to create an army of healers to go out there and save the planet. Right? I've been teaching Reiki for almost 30 years now, and I've taught lots and lots of people energy work. So I don't know, I just look at the world these days and I think my contribution is helping the healers get skilled up so they can go out and do the things they're meant to do.
Awesome. I love that. Thank you so much for sharing that, Lisa. And there was nothing available back then. You were born in the 60s, living through the 70s, 80s, even eking into the 90s.
Yep.
There was really no information available. How did you navigate that?
It was really hard. I think I was blessed. My hippie parents took me to transcendental meditation when I was 10, because that's what you did when you were a hippie in 1974. And then when I was in high school, they did something that used to be called Silva mind control. Now it's called the Silva method. And that was also incredibly helpful. Then when I was in university, it was in the 80s, and it was the dawn of the new age. And that was kind of like when help came. So when I finally had psychic teachers, had, mentors, there were new age bookstores, all those things happened at that point. So, I mean, oddly enough, when I was a kid, it created like a real strong love of paranormal TV shows and movies. Like, I just watched every ghost story Hollywood ever put out because it was like one of the only sources of information I could get. I think I was 12 when the movie Poltergeist came out, and I saw it, and there's this professional psychic, and I was like, oh my God, you can do that. And I remember sitting in the movie theater going, I'm going to do that. I'm going to be a professional psychic. And then she gives this little kind of one-off sentence about what happens when you die and why some people get stuck and how to cross them over. And I was like, oh my God, somebody knows something. And it was sort of true, mostly true, somewhat true. And I dragged all of my friends to all the ghost stories because it was so validating for me having experienced a lot of that on my own and not being able to really share it with anybody. I was like, look, 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 see, it's really a thing. So I got kind of like, I want to say like maybe half of what I learned in my ghost movie, paranormal movie, childhood thing was right, and the rest of it was just crazy Hollywood nonsense. But it did give me something to hold on to until the real stuff came through.
I love that. That's actually where I started tapping into it. Poltergeist was one of my favorite movies as a
Oh my
kid.
God, really? No
Yeah.
way.
I think that's fantastic. And I think a lot of people still to this day use TV, as an access
Hmm.
point for explanation. There's Psychic
Yeah.
Kids on and several other programs that I know are access points for a lot of people, especially when they're feeling alone. Like, what was that like as a child? What was your experience as a child, with your psychic abilities? When did that start? When do you remember your first experience?
Yeah, it literally started when I was born. So I was actually born psychic. So I had a twin brother that died in utero. And you know how twinsies are connected, like, the psychic connection. He died around 14 at 14 weeks. And I actually remember it, which is such a weird thing to say, but it's really, really true. And, he went back to the other side and I carried on. So I think, that's why I was born psychic, why I could always see things. Um, he was my imaginary friend when I was little. And I would see him like he was a real person. My mom, I was like 4. My mom's like, "Who are you talking to?" And I said, "I'm talking to my dead brother William." And she just, like ran screaming out of the room, like, ah. And but I think my very first memories were really of seeing things. I remember lying in my crib and being surrounded by beings of light that were like waving at me and smiling and all sparkly and glowy. And then my mom walks in the room and they all disappear. That's my absolute first memory.
Wow.
Um, that's once I was born. So I just think I came in that way. And my theory on this is that I came in with a strong purpose and that experience gave me the gift that I would use to do what I do now, to, just become the focus of my life, really since then. So I would say never had a time where I was doing that. I never went through like a shutdown phase, like happens to a lot of people who are super psychic as kids and shut it down. I never really went through that. I just always was full steam ahead. And, my parents were very open minded, but they just didn't know what to do. Who would have known? I mean, it's not something people did. So that was told it was my imagination. And it took me a while to figure that out. Like, oh, you have such a good imagination. I was like, I don't really think I'm imagining this. Um, I also, oddly enough, was often not afraid. It wasn't something that scared me. I saw ghosts, which I called the gray people when I was little. They would come in, sort of hang out in my room, and they were just sad. I knew they were sad. I wasn't scared of them, even though sometimes they looked scared. They looked sort of dead, um, corpsey. They can look that way. But I was like, oh, they just need to talk to somebody. And I found if I talked to them, it wasn't as scary for me as it was for the poor kid on in the movie The Sixth Sense. He really had it tough. But and I would see angels. I would see like light around people. Sometimes I would see shadowy things too. But honestly, it was living people scared the crap out of me and still do on a regular basis. Spirits just don't. It's living people we have to worry about. Spirits aren't that big of a problem.
Yeah.
And I think I just always knew that. I always had that inner knowing that that was the case.
Wow.
Yeah.
And truth to that, really, the living people are way worse than spirit for sure.
Yeah.
Um, it's interesting. I had experiences as a child too, waking up in the middle of the night and seeing a white lady sitting, next to the my sister's pillow, looking out the window and the moonlight shining on her. And she turns to me and says, shh, putting her finger up to her mouth. And then, seeing things and feeling that things were there. And I did go through a phase where I kind of shut mine down after a negative experience where a negative spirit, came in. Those a couple years later, I was in a different bedroom, that sort of situation. And I too had it's just a dream or it's just your imagination, because parents know what to do or don't even know that, that is even a possibility. I'm curious about when you said, I'm talking to my dead brother, William, and your mom dropped her tea and ran screaming out of the room. Did that affect you as a child and imprint on you at all?
I just knew I had to be quiet about it, you know? And my mom was a therapist, she was a psychologist. And I just knew that if I talked about it too much, they were going to put me in a mental hospital. Not that my parents would have, but that was the fear that I had. And I don't even know like why I was afraid of that. I just knew that I had to be quiet. Um, it's good advice, these things, right? She gave you some good advice there.
Yeah.
Um, and so I didn't, there were times it was like socially awkward or confusing for me to be in situations, especially as a kid, where I like my mom's best friend lived in this big old house, and they had a daughter my age and my sister's age, so we would go over there to play a lot. But there was this dead girl in the house, and she was always on the stairs, and would like walk around her. Never wanted to go over there, and I couldn't explain to anyone why. You know, I couldn't say because the dead girl on the stairs. I just knew that wasn't gonna lie. So it created like difficult social situations I didn't know how to get out of because I was just a kid, you know? And my mom's like, don't be unreasonable. And I'm like, no, but really, if you saw things the way I did, it's not unreasonable at all. You know what I mean? And so I had to, I don't know, I'm a Gen X, Gen Xer, and like most Gen Xers, in the raised by wolves kind of, frame that I was growing up in,
Yeah.
it just created a lot of resourcefulness for me. Like I had to be really resourceful and figure stuff out on my own. My whole generation was like that on every topic, pretty much. This was just one more. You know what I mean? This is
Yeah.
just one more. But I had to like bootstrap it and figure it out. I don't know. I mean, I did the best I could, but there were some definitely more. It was more awkward socially than anything else. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So interesting. And it's so true. The Gen X generation is like we were just like set free. Come home when the dinner bell rings and
Come home
wild
when the
and free
street
and thank
lights go
goodness.
on. That was it.
Yep.
Come home when the street lights go like 10 o'clock at night or whenever that was. Yeah.
It was a great childhood though.
Yeah.
Wait, so awesome to grow up in a town where we were able to do that. And very few times, anything ever happened in a community, which was really nice. You and I have something in common where we both grew up in haunted houses. And listening to, the first thought that comes to my mind is like, is it the house or is it the person? Because I always wonder, because I have clients show up in my house who are mediums, and I'm doing energy work on them. And I've got a line out the door of people who are just waiting, for
Yeah.
them to speak to them, open up their psychic gifts, whatever it might be. So I always like kind of ponder, like, is it the house or is it the psychic? What do you
I
think?
think that it can be both. So definitely children like us, we're ghost magnets. So children that have natural mediumship ability, psychic children, are absolute ghost magnets. So every house I've ever been in, except the house I live in now, has been just ridiculously haunted. The better my boundaries get, the better, every ghost within a 5 mile radius wants to live at my house. Um, Also, there are haunted houses. There are houses that no matter who lives there, they're going to be haunted just because something happened there, or usually there's just unresolved trauma. There's something that went down that didn't get resolved, and so it's sort of sticking around like you know trauma that needs to be processed. So there are definitely haunted people, and there are definitely haunted places. When the two come together, that's where things get like paranormal TV show worthy, where things happen for sure.
What was that like for you? That experience of growing up in a haunted
My own house didn't bother me so much, but I had other houses that did. My grandparents lived in Vermont, and their house was really haunted. It was super old. Um, and yeah, that was a place where I didn't feel safe. Um, and then, well, I remember one time my parents got a summer rental somewhere. That one sticks out of my mind. It was very bad. It was in the 70s. Somewhere in there was a dead lady in there. And I think she had died of a drug overdose. And it was very difficult. I feel like when I was on my home ground, somehow I felt more comfortable. It's actually hotels, Airbnbs. I don't know. Murphy's Law puts me in the haunted Airbnb every single time. When hotels can be very challenging because if you think about all the life that happens, good and bad, inside a hotel, you know, no one's like energetically cleaning that place out either. Hospitals always super duper duper haunted. Um,
Yeah.
I my houses are. I did live in one house that I actually, when my kids were little, but I actually moved out of because it was so haunted that it was impacting my family in a way that my children in a way that was really bad, and I couldn't clear it. I just couldn't figure out how to get rid of it. The hauntings. Some places are just bad. Some places just have bad energy, and there's no shifting it, and it's better just to leave.
Hmm. Yeah, I agree. That experience when I was a child with the negative spirit, although I go back and forth and like trying to figure out what it was, why it did it, and stuff like that. But that had impacted my life to where, 17, 18, when my abilities are coming back on, I'm very visual, I'm very sensing, I feel, claircognizance, knowing,
Yeah,
and, really felt like it did it to almost scare me or to scare me from not using my gifts because of some purpose or, you know, um, reason why I had these gifts on the planet during this time. What would you say to people who have also experienced, negative spirits?
they're around. That's why I teach psychic self-defense. And I think that it's really, really important to learn some good psychic self-defense. Just like, there are some people who are good, some people who are neutral, some people who are bad. We don't freak out about that. We just know it is a truth, and I think the same is true for spirits. And really having good discernment, ability to tell the difference, and then some really good psychic self-defense is very, very important. I always teach psychic self-defense when I teach psychic development classes. I would never open up someone psychically without giving them some really good psychic self-defense. And I think for the most part, it's about boundaries. There is some of it that's knowing what not to do. So there's a definitely like the don't do list. Um, and it's a lot like being street smart. Like if you're street smart, you can walk down any street in any big city in the world and you're okay. And if you're not street smart, you're going to get rolled. And it's the same thing, in the psychic world. So I think having good common sense, knowing what to do, what not to do, don't do the things you see the people doing on the, ghost hunting TV shows. Like that's a really good list of what not to do. Um, and understand that if you're undertaking risky psychic activities, you better be careful because you can get into trouble if you go looking for trouble. And for the most part, that doesn't have to happen if you use common sense and have some good knowledge and you have some street smarts about it all.
Yeah, I agree. And I'm
I
so
think
glad that
knowledge
you
is
brought up
knowledge
boundaries.
is information. Like if we're just informed and we know what to do, we're gonna be okay.
Yes, information is power, and boundaries are important. When I started having boundaries with this one particular spirit, it drifted out of my life. And I think the stronger my boundaries got, like in dream time and with spirit, the stronger my boundaries got in real life. And
Yeah.
like you were saying, like in where I'm at right now, I don't have that experience. And if something does pop in, I can easily like clear it away, with that to-do list because you do need to have that psychic protection in place,
Mhm.
especially if you're going to open up and start doing the work. You can't be like all willy-nilly. And I know, like, working with my
Mhm.
students is like boundaries is one of the first conversations I have, because we have to have boundaries of spirit like we do with people in
Yeah,
real life, or they're just going to walk all over us, and we don't know who we're bringing in sometimes, if we're
right.
new.
That's right. And I think the boundaries work, like you said, with people, with dead people, with living people, with spirits. Once you learn how to set boundaries, and I was a martial artist. So I studied martial arts for 20 years when I was young, mostly because when I was a teenager, I just really wanted to be a Jedi Knight. I was like a Star Wars geek. And so I found, and also studied martial arts because I like to travel and I didn't want to be scared. I wanted to be able to move about the world and not be afraid. And I found studying martial arts to be very helpful in establishing energetic boundaries. And, you know, it was part of my early training as a psychic when I was a teenager. And it gave me kind of that's where I get this psychic self-defense analogy. When you know how to do that, you can walk through the world without fear and and still have common sense. I think both things are important. But I think once you learn the trick of boundaries, it works with whatever you're dealing with.
100%. What would be some advice that you would give our listeners around the to-do list if they're experiencing it and really might not have too many tools in their toolkit right now to be able to do that, handle some
I think
situations?
the first thing to do is have really, really good energy hygiene practices so that you're starting every day with a way to ground yourself, to clear your energy, and to set energetic boundaries. And I use like a breathing and guided meditation, um, process for that. And especially for those who are more empathic, or those of us that are working with people, or maybe if you're working in a psychically difficult environment like a hospital, you like I do it in the morning when I get up, I do it before I see clients, in between clients, at the end of the day. I do it while I'm sitting in the car before I go into Walmart. I do it halfway through Walmart. I do it when I get out of Walmart. Like all those things. Airplanes are so hard for me because airplanes are so crowded and you can't get away. You can't get, you're stuck with a person next to you basically sitting on your lap, for hours, and it's a tight environment. And so if I'm not practicing, those things really take me out. But when we have good psychic hygiene, it makes our energy field literally stronger, so that we have a stronger energetic boundary. And then I feel like that gives us a leg to stand on for our other boundaries that we set. I wrote a whole book about this called Energy Healing for Empaths, which are basically energetic practices for sensitives and psychics to understand how to manage our energy in ways that make it possible to really be liberated and move around the world and do whatever we want to do without being so sensitive that you can't get off the couch and go to a movie or go to the store. I was like that, and I know many of my clients and students were, and I think it's not hard to learn. It's easy practices. It does sort of like going to the gym. You have to do it for a while before you feel the results of it, but it's a life changer.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for sharing those tips and tools. I know it'll be really helpful for our listeners. And let's dive a little bit more into being an empath, because I think it's really hard for people right now, if they're psychic, if they're an empath, if they're sensitive, HSPs, like,
Mhm.
we're whether we know it or not, we're sponges. We're absorbing everything, in our own homes, in our neighborhoods, when we go out, the airplane, the grocery store, Walmart,
Yep.
and the collective. Like, whether we know it or not, we are absorbing anything and everything from the collective, even if we're not, plugged into media. Any
Yeah.
suggestions for the empaths out there who are super sensitive and, picking up on everything that's going on right now?
Yeah, I think there's I think like basically like a cord cutting ritual that you can do to disconnect from the energy of the collective right now is really, really important. I generally go outside and do it barefoot. So I find, super like being grounded is incredibly important. Um, I think that, yeah. that's what it is. It's like cutting cords from the collective. And you can ask Archangel Michael to do it. You can ask your guides to do it. I do it before I go to sleep so I don't have bad dreams. Like we need to disconnect from the collective. Um, because the collective is freaking out right now. And it's really, I mean, we just will feel massive anxiety and fear and hatred and anger and all the things if we're not unplugging from that. So I think spending some time doing your energetic hygiene practices, I think is really helpful. Meditation is really helpful. I think finding places to shut down the noise, you know, because it's so noisy. It's really like if you have the TV, the radio, the podcast, if you have that in your ear all the time, it's almost impossible to disconnect. So find some time where you are not plugged in, um, and get outside, be barefoot, breathe, ground, do some breath work, do your energy practices and see what happens. Yeah.
Great advice. And I know I'm feeling it. I was hit with another wave yesterday that was just huge and was similar to a wave that I received before a house fire that I experienced in 2011. So it kind of, put me in a space of, okay, here's this wave again. I don't necessarily get all the information about what's coming, just that something might be coming. And it's very interesting, when I'm in that state and have to pull in, like, okay, remember, trust the process, breathe, meditate, get that space, go out in nature, take a Epsom salt
Mm,
bath, whatever it might be to like get myself
yeah.
grounded. I know my head hit the pillow and I was still feeling it. And I was guided to listen to a favorite video, that just really is calming and it settles me. And it's really just a soothing, you know,
Mm.
um, book, audio book that I pop on and listen to that kind of brings me back to my center, brings me back to that soul embodiment and get grounded again. And I think that it's really important for us to take those moments to kind of like pause when we get those waves or we start having anxiety or getting anxious or we're hit with a little doom and gloom because we're not really enjoying what's happening, around the world, and kind of come back to our light and come back to that love. I am part of a women's group, and we're like-minded, individuals, and kind of like ping pong things off of each other. And it's nice to dip into community or have a group like that of other women where we
Mm.
can like kind of remind each other, like, stop, breathe, go back into your heart, go back into the light. So important.
I think so beautiful. And I think it's really important to learn how to regulate ourselves, how to regulate our emotions, which you just listed off a bunch of really beautiful ways to do that, and how to regulate our nervous system. Because once your nervous system fires fight or flight, you're not going to get good psychic information. You're going to get your own internal static, your own fears. You're going to get your fears and the reflection of the fears of the collective just sort of like amplify each other, and it can seem like a really accurate psychic hit, but you're really just tapping into the synergy, between your fear and the fear of the collective. So bringing your nervous system down out of fight or flight is super important. And so having like a toolkit, a self-soothing toolkit, a self-care toolkit, an emotional regulation toolkit. This is actually what my most current book that I'm working on is all about that. And I wish I had a magic wand and I could wave over the entire world to teach everybody how to regulate their nervous system and regulate their emotions. I swear we'd have no problems in the world anymore if everyone knew how to do that. So I think those are really, 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 really important. And community, all the things you said are so awesome.
What are some ways outside of what I said where we can regulate our nervous system? Because, you and I might have those from having our practices, but everybody else, we're not taught as a collective in society, like how to navigate our nervous system or to self-regulate.
Right. Yeah, I think that like I like the breathing techniques. So box breathing, where you inhale for 4, hold for 4, exhale for 4, hold for 4, or the 4-2-8 breathing pattern. There's a lot of scientific research that says that brings our nervous system out of, fight or flight and into the rest and digest side can be really helpful. I mean, they're devices you can wear too, like the vagal nerve stimulators that sort of take you out of vagal nerve. If you have like the fight people tend to, and I'm more on the fight. It goes into our adrenal glands, and we can the breathing techniques really work very well. If you're the flight person, it's probably the vagus nerve, and you need that's where you need grounding. You need to get back in your body. That's where you need to breathe, and it can be really that those things can be super helpful. But find 5 things you can see, and 4 things you can hear, and 3 things you can touch, and you know 2 things you can smell, like 1 thing you can taste, like focusing on that also will take you out of fight or flight. And I think it's when things trigger off like that, the other thing is to ask yourself. The first thing that I do is I ask, is that me or is it the world? Am I feeling my own stuff? Am I triggered? Because sometimes it's hard to tell, and sometimes we can blame it on the world when really it's our own inner triggers. Or sometimes we think it's our own inner triggers, but really we've just picked up from the collective. So I think like that's the first question: is this me or is this the world? And in order to do that, you have to know yourself really well. So you have to know who you are. You have to have some emotional self-reflection, so that you can answer that question. Usually I find that if you ask yourself that question, most people know. You can tell, is it just my own inner child stuff or my own triggers, or am I tapping into the collective? And there's kind of two sets of different things you do depending on the answer to that question, right? So if it's you're going to work on, self-soothing yourself, bringing your nervous system down, finding a beautiful, productive way to express your feelings. If it's the world you're tapping into, that's when you're going to cut cords. That's when you're going to ground. That's when you're going to imagine disconnecting from the collective. Maybe you get in the salt tub. You do more clearing and grounding practices. Where if it's really you have to attend to yourself, with a lot of love and kindness. So you can, take care of whatever is going on inside of you.
Awesome. That is some golden information right there. Thank you so much, Lisa, for sharing that. I want to dip into the psychics in our audience because I know everybody's receiving a lot of information right now. Like, how do we manage the receiving aspect when a lot of psychics are saying, why am I receiving this? There's nothing I can do. You know, how do the psychics out
Yeah.
there, manage that information drop?
It's a predicament. It's a bit of a pickle. I think the first thing to do is remember that nothing is set in stone, and all we ever see is probabilities and possibilities. I think that it's really good to ask yourself, are you tuning into the collective, or are you seeing something that's actually going to happen? And sometimes it's very hard to tell the difference. You know, you might be picking up a psychic impression from the collective that's not actually predictive, right? You're just reading the field of the collective. So I think that's an important distinction. And then when I get, predictive things, I always put them, I have like a little journal that I call the X Files. I literally wrote the
Love
X
that.
Files on the top on this journal, and I write it down in there, and then I kind of forget about it. Because we never know. And I've seen some things that I put some things in there that happened, like 9/11. Um, and but I didn't know what was going to happen. We some often, even with those big giant things, I didn't know what I was seeing until after it happened. I was like, oh, that's what that was that I've been seeing for 6 months. Um, so I don't think it's useful to dwell on it. I write it down. And then if it happens, I claim psychic brownie points. And if it doesn't, I forget about it. Because mm, you know, we just I've felt a lot of things that have never happened or that I didn't know. Sometimes they happen and we don't know about it.
Yeah.
You know, are we even getting the truth? Are we even getting what's really going on from the news right now? I don't think we are. So
Yeah, no.
I would say try not to stress it too much. Like how are we ever going to know if it happened or didn't happen? So I think of sometimes precognition is like it's like being a spider sitting at the middle of a spider web, and those spider webs go out into the future, into the past, all around us. And when something with really strong energy walks through that, we feel those tickles, sort of like the disturbance in the force. We feel it. But I don't think it's productive to dwell on it, you know? Write it down somewhere and then pray, ask God to handle it, pray on it, ask the angels and ascended masters to help with it. They don't know sometimes that things need help until we call it out directly. So I think the best thing we can do is put it in the hands of the angels and pray, kind of like ask for help. That's how I handle it.
I love that. That's awesome. And also, God, I'm so glad you said like predictions, like there's free will. We never know what, is divinely orchestrated, what's not.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't know. And like you said, it is
Yep.
possibilities. So we could see one thing and it not manifest because somebody made a different decision and took us down a different road,
That's right.
kind of like our,
Yes.
just going to bring it up like the last election in the United States, we're deciding between two, and I really saw like, okay, we could take the slow road or we could take the like hard fast road, and that's what ended up getting chosen. And I spoke about it before, like back in January, like hearing founding fathers and knowing that was all about the patriarchy, and then seeing what happened, and then a couple months later hearing the fall of Rome. And then here we are, the dismantling of, everything, that's been built that
Yeah.
admittedly needs to be shifted and changed, but not necessarily, in the direction it's going in right now, more, gosh, I would just love for some new blood, some younger people to, put their irons in the fire and, help us move to kind of, lack of better words, higher paradigm. Um,
Yeah.
that's my
I
dream.
think that'll be a really interesting time. And the eventually, like, all the boomers are aging out, and I'm putting my money on the younger generations coming up as having, making better decisions than um the power grab of the powers that be that don't want to let go. But
Yeah.
we are in a deconstruction cycle, and we go as humans, we evolve through cycles where things grow, where things sustain, and things end, and that this is a normal evolutionary cycle that happens all across the universe. We can look at physics, Newtonian physics, quantum physics. We can look at alchemy and all in philosophy and see that pattern in everything. And so we're in a deconstruction cycle. It doesn't mean it's wrong or shouldn't be happening. It's just extremely uncomfortable. As humans, we don't like that. We don't like change. We don't like letting go. We don't like chaos. And it doesn't mean, like you said, that it shouldn't happen. It is going to happen. There's an inevitability about it happening.
Hmm.
I think that's where we as healers show up, that we decided to show up on this planet during this time to help other people, to be of service. Many of us are here to be part of the reconstruction team, that when we reconstruct, we will be reconstructing at a higher level of beauty, harmony, and order. It's going to be an evolution. I 100% believe that. And is it comfortable? No, it's not comfortable for me or either. Like, I don't like it either. But I just have like trust that I'm going to be in the right place at the right time to do what I came to do. And I know the only thing that I have control over is my inner state of consciousness. And I think, like, having a high vibe, and I don't mean in a like spiritually bypassy way where you're just shoving it, all the bad things under the rug. I don't mean that, but to do it that way, but to hold a higher state of consciousness, like, we conceive the planet if enough of us wake up into this higher state, if enough of us come out of the polarity, us against them thinking, and raise really up into the 5D consciousness, the quantum
Yeah.
consciousness, where we have unity consciousness, where we see, we have transcendence, we feel union with ourselves, with God, with other humans. If we all go there, or enough of us go there, we're going to shift the trajectory of where we are. And I think we have a choice. I think we're at a choice point. And all I can do is maintain my own level of consciousness. Right.
Yeah.
and help other people do that as well. So that's kind of how I get through it and try not to get too hooked into the fear of the collective or the us against them. Um and it's hard because it really shows up very, you know, it's not theoretical. It's like showing up in real life all the way through life. And we just take it, I take it day by day, like today, meditating and doing what I can to be of service, help other people, and to keep myself in a higher vibration.
Same. I was pulling out all of my tools too last night and, today, and just reminding myself, stay in the higher state of consciousness, stay in the 5D, stay grounded, stay in love. If, I'm worried about something, beam love out to the world, pray, give it
Yeah,
to God, all of the things. It's so real. And I too believe, like you, Lisa, like if enough of us do it, it's kind of like the 100th monkey. Like we can
yeah,
shift. We
yeah.
can shift the paradigm to the 5D instead of staying in that duality consciousness, which would be wonderful. And one of the reasons why I love that I have this show, this platform where I can bring people like you on and we can have these conversations and really impact the world with what you're bringing to the world, Lisa, with your books and your talks and showing up at conventions and all of the work that you do in the world. It's all of the people like you that are out there, doing their part to shift humanity in that positive direction, in that 5D direction. I think it's really super, super important. And, all of our
Mm-hmm.
listeners out there, like if you're doing that, like don't lose hope. Like you're part of the team, like you were saying, Lisa, part of the team that's going to be here to rebuild. And
Yeah,
it's real.
yes. And it's coming. We're make I think actually 2025 is the worst of it. And all the astrologers that I know and my own internal, feeling is that this is the tough year. We're almost through. We're almost done. I don't know what's gonna happen in 26. We might get more of the same, but I do think we're in it. We're neck deep in it right now.
Yeah.
And um and that's, I think like I said, so what so many of us signed up to be here. We all signed up to be here on purpose during this time. That's just true. And I think like we can also ride the wave of the ascension. We can also use this time to shift through, blow through so much karma. There's so much incredible purging and clearing that's going on, which is not fun, but it's super, like, if you want to quantum leap your soul's evolution, this was the time to be on the planet. And it's a little bit through the eye of the needle. You know what I mean? It's not so much fun to go through it. And there are days where my friend calls it in the blender days, where you feel like you're in the blender. And on
Love
those
that.
days, we go back to what we talked about: nervous system regulation, emotional regulation, like purge it all out, journal it all, like let the feelings come up, let all the old, crusty old ancestral patterns or past lives or childhood stuff, like it's very purgy right now. And I feel like it goes in sort of like 2 week long pulses. Like it reminds me of contractions, like I had three 9-pound babies. Oh wow. And
Right there
the
with you.
those 2 minute contractions, like every 2 minutes. I think we're this every 2 week is like a birthing experience. And when the contractions happen, it doesn't feel good. Everything gets contracted. Our energy does. Everything gets squeezed. And those blender days. And I also feel like it's very linked to the cycles of the moon. So I feel like that, it's connected deeply to the lunar cycles. And I'm like, okay, here comes another one. What am I gonna do? I'm gonna take a nap. I'm gonna take a tub. I'm gonna sit in my garden and like commune with honeybees. Um, I slow things down on the contracty days. I journal, I cry, I write, I make soup. You know, I like do the things that are, um, and then it lifts. And it's like, woo, okay, we got through that one. But I also see it as productive. So I think about what we let go just like contractions in birth are productive, like they're leading you towards something, it's not just random pain designed to torture you. It's actually leading us towards something. And as we purge through those things, we are actually letting go of generations worth of trauma, lifetimes worth of trauma. Um, and I think that that's good, even though it's super difficult on the tough days. It's super painful, and you're like, how can I even get through one more day like this? But then it shifts, and we feel a little lighter, right, on the other side of it.
Thank goodness too. And so true. And I love, love, love that analogy. And it's so real. It's like feels like we're contracting in, and then it does, it comes in waves.
Yeah,
And, just like you were saying, like the cycles of the moon, like, oh, I like have my most vivid dreams on the full moon. Well, the energy is increasing around the full moon. So of course, and if we're tracking astrology, we're tracking how, the waves are coming in or the
right.
cycles are coming in. And I love that you pointed that out. And I love
Yeah,
that you pointed out that it's productive because even though it hurts, it's bumping us to the next thing. Kind of like when we like on a
right.
micro level like experience something in our own lives, it might like be horrible and painful and this thing that we're going through, but then it ends up bumping us into something else in the future where we can look back and go, oh, like I needed to go through that to get to where I am right now, and if that hadn't happened, then I want to be where I am right now. And even though that was super painful, I really learned a lot going through it, and I'm a new person now. And that's the productiveness of like what's going on. Like we're going through this, but we have the potential to like be that newer, better world on the other side. I love that you pointed that out.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah,
I think
that's
we need to
awesome.
remember that on the tough days. So we don't just feel like we're being randomly tortured. Otherwise it can seem like that.
It really can. It's like, why? Then it's okay. All right. I'm just a soul living in this body and I'm eternal and this is just the play. And it's all right. Even if something big does happen, like my soul's going to go on and everything's going to be okay anyway. Back to like the nitty gritty of it.
I know. I just decided a long time ago not to worry about that. I'm like, I had a long conversation with God and my angels, and I'm like, just put me where you want me to be. If I'm gonna die in the first wave of the zombie apocalypse, so be it. You know what I mean? And if not, then put me where I'm meant to help. And then I stopped worrying about it. I'm like, I'm it's not that I'm not gonna spend time um getting too upset about that. I'm just gonna trust that I am where I'm supposed to be no matter what happens.
I
That was
love
a big
that.
relief for me.
And those are
And
great words to
kind of
live
funny
by.
because my mother was a prep. Yeah, it's sort of funny because my mother was a prepper. She was really always a prepper. And then, of course, nothing ever happened. And I think it was fun for her, but watching her go through that, I'm like, I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to trust that. I'm going to be where I'm meant to be. And if that means I'm the first one out, then I'm out. It's okay.
I love that. That's great. Lisa, it's been such a pleasure to host you. How can people reach you? How can they find your books?
You can go to my website, lisacampion.com. I have a lot of free resources there. I have a lot, also have a beautiful YouTube page that has a lot of really great free stuff. I also have my own podcast called The Miracle of Healing. Stop by and check that out. And you can find my books anywhere books are sold. And on my website, I teach all different kinds of psychic development from beginner, intermediate, advanced, and even pro level. I love to work with people who want to go pro and become professional psychics. So yeah, stop by and visit my website and leave me a message. I would love to talk to anybody who drops by and leaves a comment. I always respond.
Awesome. That's perfect. And before we pop off and start our Patreon after chat, which is exclusive, everybody. So be sure to go onto Patreon to hear the after chat after this. What is one jewel of wisdom that you would love to leave our audience with today?
I would we talked about it a little bit, but just to remember that the outer world is a reflection of your inner state of consciousness. And that if you are upset about the outer state of the world, then get your inner consciousness sorted out. And that's really, I think, the best contribution we can make, because we can't control anything else. We're just along for the ride. But that's the one thing we really can do. And finding things that make you joyful, play, creativity, community, simple things are super helpful right now.
That's awesome. Thank you for that, Lisa. Thank you for that, Jewel. What a great way to end the show. Lisa, thank you so much for being a guest. It was such a pleasure to host you.
Oh, thank you so much for having me on your show. It's super fun.
So fun. And thank you everyone for joining us again. I'm Liz Peterson, and this is Raise the Vibe with Liz. And come join us in the after chat. Thanks, everybody. Remember to get out there and raise the vibe. Bye now.